Right. Oh, Jenny was asking the question, are you here? Hey, Jenny's here. That's all right. I'll make sure she hears me. Okay. I'm not going to try putting the slides
Hello.
up. Hi. Yeah, you're here. Right. Okay. So I'll carry on. If everybody else can just mute themselves, that's good. So yeah, there's two reasons we don't teach it. So one is it's really difficult for them to do anyway. It's difficult for them to not forage because foraging is normal. It's natural behavior. It's not aberrant, abnormal behavior. The way horses get food is they go exploring, they see or smell some food they like the look of, and then they try and eat it. Okay, and if you throw your treat bag down on the, throw a treat bag with some treats, or throw a towel with some food under it down in the stable or on the yard, and your horse is going to go and explore it, find the food and eat it, and that's normal behavior. So that's the first reason it's difficult for them to do anything but forage. So when we said, well, we don't want to teach unwanted behavior, we set them up to fail. I think we set them up to fail if we stand next to them with a bag of food. Okay, so we set them up to do the wrong thing because it would be normal for them and natural for them to try and forage on us. So the second thing is, I was starting to say, every horse, unless you are able to interact with wild horses or horses that have never encountered people before, which is extremely unusual and difficult, then they are innately afraid of us. And then when they come into contact, because they're neophobic, so they're naturally wary of things they've never seen before, novel things, as are most animals. But most horses or equines that have come into contact with people before have had unpleasant experiences at the hands of those people. And I include me in that. Before I knew what I was doing, I was the same as everyone else. It was, if I wanted my horse to come with me to the field, I pulled the lead rope. And if I wanted him to get back away from the stable door, I pushed him, or I waved my hands in his face, or I, shouldered him away from the stable door. So until either we come to force-free training or we have an experience with an animal that's not yet experienced force-free training, they're already either slightly frightened of what we might do, or wary of what we might do, and a little bit vigilant about what we might do. And what they tend to do in that situation, where they're in a situation where there's something they want that's available, but they're a bit worried about being there to get it, is they will show what we now call calming signals. So they will tend to move slowly. They can keep their head low. And very often what they will do is turn their head away slightly. So they won't make eye contact. They'll drop their eyes. They might still have an eye on you, which of course they can do. They'll drop their head slightly, or they'll turn their head away. Now, Jenny, you know that because we saw, Jenny and I have been training both of our horses, and we saw a lot of that from one of them when we first started to train it. And that is normal. That doesn't mean you're a bad owner and you've been mean to your horse. That's actually so normal for horses. So what we tend to see is that the animal that's turning their head away, and most of them will, is an animal that is saying, I'm no threat to you, please don't threaten me. So you're in a situation where we're causing a horse to show us an appeasement gesture or a calming signal that is indicative of anxiety. And then we're clicking and reinforcing for it, which now means I can't tell the difference between when they're anxious and showing a calming signal and when they're turning their head away to get a treat. And I want to know. So I never train head away, but I often see it happen. If I see a horse turn their head away when someone's training them, I say you need to put distance between yourself and that animal, because that animal feels anxious about where you are. And you will see them do it with each other. You'll see them do it sometimes. I've seen horses show appeasement gestures at an electric fence. If they're kind of worried about an electric fence, they'll turn their head away. If you're interested in this subject, a really good book to read is Calming Signals book. Can't remember the name of the author now. Rachel Drasimer.
Yeah.
Rachel Drasimer. Yeah, it went momentarily. So that's a really good book to learn about what appeasement gestures look like in horses. And there's lots of literature that is the same for dogs. So there's lots and lots of really good quality literature now that explains about appeasement. Appeasement is where the animal's trying to say, you don't need to worry about me. I'm not going to harm you. I'm no threat to you. And if you want to think about how that happens in humans, imagine you are on a train or a bus and a group of very drunk people get on the train or that bus, and you do not want them to notice you. So think about the things you do in that situation. Number one, you don't make eye contact. You don't make eye contact. You look down, you look away, you look intently out of the window, and you get really interested in something that's out of the window. Or you get a book out and you read your book really intently and try to look invisible in order not to attract the attention of people that you might see as a threat, So anyone that's been in a situation like that, you also know how you feel. You kind of go, I don't want to upset these people. But now imagine you're in a situation where those people have got something you really want or need, but you feel threatened by them. And that's how many horses feel in that situation. So I don't do that. I'm not convinced I like the mindset behind grown-ups and children.
No, I know about that.
That's my opinion. And it may well be that, this trainer is now doing something different. But I know a lot of positive trainers that teach that, but that's just because they've copied that. A lot of what you see happen in the positive community is what people have copied each other doing. And then I was the same. I looked at what other people were doing and thought, yeah, but I don't really like that because I'm not sure I like the mindset behind it. But what I'm seeing is the horses showing this behavior, which seems to indicate to me they're feeling anxious. So now we introduce, in the horse training world, we introduce stand still, face forward when they're already eating and we're at a distance. And we capture it because they can do it then. They can just have a mouthful of hay and then they lift their head up to look at the scenery and they're standing there chewing and we can go, yay, they're standing facing forward, looking at the scenery. That's a behavior we want more of. But we're not making that behavior contingent on food. And that's why, as those of you that have trained with horse charming will know, is when in the first few exercises we do, there is always other food available. So Jan, you will know with the stuff that you've been doing, we've said you have a pile of hay there, and that's so they can eat that hay. They don't have to do anything to get food. There's already food there. Does that help, Jenny?
Yes.
Probably a bigger answer than you wanted.
No, thank you. It's a long time since I ever looked at Alexandra Curlin's things, but I just always remember that exercise and always remember feeling it seems quite forced. You're just standing there waiting for the horse to, have that. And I think she even talks about reinforcing for ears forwards and things like that. So then it sort of seems like you're then telling your horse to put on a smiley face when it might not be feeling very smiley.
Yeah. And it also means, I'm very wary of training anything that could be interpreted as an emotional response, because then you lose the distinction between a trained response and a natural response. So I don't, there's a different way I go about that. I don't encourage people to train animals that are looking unhappy or grumpy or miserable, because then that's how they're gonna, that's the emotion that gets tied to the to the behavior that you've trained. What I would say is, if you're seeing that behavior, change the environment, because you've got a grumpy animal, you know, so change the environment or do something different, rather than don't reinforce until they show a good expression.
Max?
Yeah.
So how do you manage the mugging situation then? Because so what I understand what you're saying. It is natural for them to come to your treat pouch, because that's a natural foraging behavior. But of course, we don't want them in our laps all the time. So how do you manage the mugging behavior? We don't actively manage it. In what we do is, when we begin to train them, you'd really need to follow the lessons, to be fair, because all the lessons spell that out. But in a nutshell, we start by with the animal in protected contact, and they've already got food. And we teach them that while they're eating the food, we click and we bring them some more food, and then we go away again. And then we start to capture the head coming above that food. So if they're eating hay, we start to capture, they're eating the hay with their head a little bit above the food, and we click, we go towards them, we drop more food, and then we go again. So what we teach them is that we come to them with the food. So they don't need to come to us for the food. They learn a number of things. One is, we bring the food to them, but we set them up to have no need to forage on us, because they already have food. That's it in a nutshell. So they learn the food comes to them, and they learn the food gets, either to begin with, it gets dropped in front of them. And then once they've got the head above it, we start to hand feed, but they learn that the food comes to them. And we always deliver that food away from our body, not close to our body. So we don't draw them towards our body. And then what you can find is, you can then, and that's all done in protected contact, what you can find is, then when you go into protected contact, which we do gradually, so you might start by, you say to somebody, right, now you can duck under the rope and go to them and feed them, and then come away again. You've already got I guess, the pattern in place of where you go to them with the food, and the food comes to them. There's a click or a bridge signal, and the food comes to them in your hand in a particular place. Okay. And then once you're training in free contact, then you make sure that you don't just stop. You don't just stop in the middle of training and stand there with your food bag on, because they'd be well within their rights to come and forage on you if you did. So we have a protocol for ending a session. We make it really clear when we're training with food and when we're not training with food. So there's clear visual signals to them that tell them, oh, right, there's no food available now, because they're not wearing their food pouch. So I tend to use a food pouch as a signal that there's going to be training with food available. So there's lots of little things that we do that mean they never have reason to forage. And if they do start to forage, then we just get back in protected contact. So, you know, and then they can just go, oh, well, I've lost that food, but I've got some other food over here, so I'll just go and eat that then. And it makes a big difference to how they react. And of course, what you stop doing is, you don't carry food around with you all the time. You don't put food in your pockets, because then your pockets will smell of food and they're going to go looking. So don't make yourself smell of food. Have a specific bag that you use for training. But you'd probably find it really interesting to do our lessons with a horse, because that's all of that theory. How do we set them up to succeed? How do we make sure that you don't produce an emotional response of either anxiety or frustration? Because if you're training an anxious or fearful animal, you're embedding that emotion with the behavior that you're training. So we've done lots of things to mitigate against that. And Emma does very similar things when she's doing dog training. So does that help? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Good.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, any more? If not, we've done really well actually, because we've only run a bit, overrun a bit. So that was quite good. So any more questions? If you have any more questions, sorry, was that somebody saying they had a question?
I was just wondering, does having a dog sit before like getting a bone or their dinner fall into that?
I would say it could do, yeah. Yeah. Because if a bone or their dinner is really high value to them, then they might find it difficult to do again, and B, you're kind of making them do something to get a very high value resource. So it might be better to put the bone somewhere you want them to go and eat it and let them in. It might be better. I'm not a big fan of making dinner or a very high valued resource sort of part of a reinforcement process, because I think it's very difficult for them to do the behavior you want when they're super excited about, a dinner. Emma's the one to talk to you about the best way to approach that with dogs, to be fair. And I suspect Emma would be having people feed dogs more frequently and use some of their, dinner food as part of training, as we would with horses actually. But that's where you have to be really careful about when is it coercion. If the dogs find it really easy to sit, he sees you with the bone and you go, hey, Buster, sit, and he goes, yeah, sure, I'm sitting. You go, great, there's the bone. That's different to if the dog's running round in circles and jumping up and clearly over threshold with excitement. It's going to be difficult for him to do a calm behavior when he's excited already.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, cool, thank you. So if you have more questions, by all means ask them on the group. That's what we like. There's quite a few people that haven't.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me who you are, because I can't see everybody at the moment.
What is? Hey, I'm Minna.
Oh, hi, Minna.
Hello. What is forage?
Forage.
You said
Forage.
that earlier.
Sure. Yeah. Forage is where animals go exploring, looking for food. So they go to try to find food. Yeah.
Okay. Can you spell it for me, please?
Sorry, I didn't understand what you said then. You can type me in the chat if it's easier. Although I can't see the chat.
Can you spell it, Max?
Can you spell it?
Oh, can I spell forage? Yeah, thank you. F-O-R-A-G-E. Yeah. Good question. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Right. So what happens now is I go away and upload all the videos, and I upload the slides to the group, and then I'll post them up, both of those up onto the group, and then in the next 2 or 3 days, once you've had a chance to let it all sink in, I'll do a little quiz. If you want to get a certificate at the end of the course, you will need to do all the quizzes and then the final quiz at the end. So bear that in mind. Don't leave it too late and get behind with the quizzes. They don't take very long and they're not difficult. And then if you've got any follow-on questions or queries, then by all means put those in the group. Laura posted the Rachel's book reference in the chat, but I'll put that in the group as well. I'll just make a note to do that. And I'll see you all this time next week. All right.
Okay, great.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.